In the short term, you can't control the outcome, only the process. So long as you execute on good enough habits for long enough, great things will reliably happen. Now, I know, you've heard all of this before. You've also been told to celebrate the process. You don't need somebody else to tell you to celebrate the process. You already simultaneously buy into the idea of celebrating the process and have no idea how to actually celebrate the process. I'm so old, guys.
How old are you,
How
John?
old are you, John?
Sounds like a
Thanks for
joke.
asking. I'm 39 years old. No, that's not why I feel old. I've been feeling like better the last week or two, like mentally, but also physically. Just feeling better. I feel like the kind of post book launch low valley or whatever. I'm kind of past that, and I'm back to work, which helps. I'm really
Hmm.
cranking through. The end of this week, I'm going to be submitting the second draft of the manuscript
Wow.
for Obvious Challenge, which is a really big deal. Like second draft to me is the big one. The final draft is kind of the finishing touches, but second draft is most of the heavy lifting. And so feeling good, back to work. But I've also been working out like harder, like normal kind of. Um,
Hmm.
but harder where I felt like I could push myself. And so yesterday I felt like I could push myself a little bit. So I did. And then I went and played pickleball for like 2 hours. And then today again, of course, I worked out and my body is destroyed, man. Like, yo, I don't know how these 19-year-olds do it.
I think the secret's in the one and the nine.
Is it when you put them together like that? Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think that's how they do it by being 19.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeez. Somebody give me some of that testosterone. The amount of men that I'm seeing in the fitness industry that are now taking various types of testosterone supplementation is really, it seems to be growing at a very fast rate.
Absolutely.
I don't know, Len, what's your opinion on
Yeah.
that? I mean, I've never felt
Testosterone,
any
it's the
need,
new
desire,
Viagra,
nothing.
and people
It's
want
all
an edge.
performance enhancement, but it's not like
Yeah,
muscular, I think,
yeah.
right?
I think that people are trying to solve problems that came along with lifestyle because a lot of men in the fitness
Oh,
arena weren't ever really that healthy. They were
interesting.
muscular, right?
Hmm.
But they did the lack of concern for health and
Yeah.
the get to an aesthetic body at all cost thing period of their life is starting to catch up with them, man. And they've got some hormonal disruption, and they're just trying to quick fix it. So it's the new Viagra, right? Um,
I wonder how much
they're
of,
they're
of it's that versus men getting to talk about things that they're struggling with at the doctor without as much
yes,
shame. And so they're
yes,
getting more fixes and help than they would have
yes,
otherwise. So I feel
yep,
like a lot of things like back in my day, nobody did X, Y, and Z. It's like nobody could
Right.
right,
fucking talk about anything without like being
right.
guilted or shamed about anything.
Okay,
So
so
like
to
it feels
recap,
like it's new. Huh?
Len went neutral, Amber went positive. I'm going to go negative for
Good,
anybody keeping score.
as it
Classic.
should be, as it
I
should be.
wonder whether it has to do with, I mean, the people who I see doing it at least are generally people who are kind of like in the influencer space. And they're
Well,
not
fuck yeah.
necessarily in the influencer space because of how their body looks, but their body is part of their brand. I see this with a fair amount of business influencers now who,
Hmm.
once they build a brand, because the majority of their audience is young men, um, they they got all jacked and stuff like that. And unnaturally, right?
Right.
Um, and now they're shooting videos with their sleeves off their shirts and stuff. I wonder whether it's part of their brand where they kind of can't get away from it, and they've taken on so much as well, and they can't perform at that level anymore, like almost mentally, energetically.
Oh
I
shit, yeah.
tend to think that slowing down is a good thing. Perhaps it's counterintuitive. I think it's a very natural thing to slow down. Um, you know, it, anthropologically, humans, particularly men, become naturally we become much less aggressive over time.
Hmm.
We go from kind of like a hunter type person to like the wise old elder with the big gray beard going like that,
Yes,
you know,
the
and
medicine man,
and
the kung fu master.
the kung fu master and uh, educating the young, being kind of respected in that way. And I don't feel the need anymore. I mean, I'm only 39, but I'm definitely slowing down. And I don't feel the need to try to reverse that, I guess, is what
Right.
I'm saying. I'm okay having one big project that I'm proud of that's creatively fulfilling. Um, uh, I talk about this in the next book, but I talk about, why we do something changes, why we start doing something changes over the course of our life, and why I started to work out has changed multiple times. But the main reason why I still work out now is actually because it allows me to do the creative work that I love
Right.
to do. Sitting for long periods of time is actually difficult on the body. Uh, if you want to energize the mind, I think you need to exhaust the body. If you want to put your anxieties and dumb shit emotions at bay, you kind of need to physically exhaust yourself. It's a very natural thing to do. And so that's why I work out. That's why I exercise, is because it allows me to physically and mentally and emotionally and probably spiritually too, whatever the hell that word means, to do the work that I love to do, to think deeper about subjects and perhaps come to counterintuitive solutions where it's like, or conclusions where it's like, nah, maybe I don't want to be an aggressive alpha male anymore. Uh, Maybe I don't need to be the dude crashing 3 or 4 wheels on the end of the barbell in the gym, getting all the attention of the feminas, Um,
That's not a word. I'm, s- that's, I'm certain that's not a word. But the story resonates, John.
Thank you.
I dig what you're dropping, brother.
Appreciate that. So let's finish this stuff about love. Um, I'm excited to finish this chapter with you because the end of the chapter is about love, but actually it's about celebrating the process. And you always hear advice all over the place, everywhere, social media, books, where it's like celebrate the process, not the outcome. And I think that that's great, and I think that that's very good advice. But it always kind of stops there, and I've always wanted more. And I'm like, well, how the fuck do I do that? How the fuck do I celebrate the process and ignore the outcome? Like, tell me. And they're like, oh, sorry, book's done. And you're like, I guess I'll tweet this, for clout. But it doesn't really help me that much. And so I've kind of figured out a way to celebrate the process in a way to bring me along the journey of completing big, difficult projects with the people that I love. And so I decided to put this in the love chapter. Anyway, we'll get to that near the end. Start with a section called "Lift Your Own Weight," and it starts with one of my favorite stories. Difficult story at the time, but the loneliest period of my life was a trip to New Zealand after a semester abroad in Australia. And before flying home with my last 18 New Zealand dollars, I bought this piece of small jade. It was just like this tiny piece of small New Zealand jade. And I saved it for 6 years. And then the day that I told Allison that I loved her for the first time, I gave her that piece of jade, and she wore it on her neck ever since. 16 years after that trip, on April 1st, 2022, at 4:33 a.m., Allison gave birth to our second son, who we named Jaden Goodman. And we didn't know the gender, as we don't know the gender of this next child who's going to be born in May. But it was going to be Jada if it was a girl, and Jaden if it's a boy. We don't yet have the names for the next one. So
Step it up, John.
early on in the book, we met this woman who I've come to really enjoy her work and the chats that I've had with her. Her name is Alice Lamar, and we interviewed her. Perhaps we can share the interview, Amber, at the end of this episode if you can find the number. But we met Alice Lamar near the end of her season of Yes in New York City. And at that point, I promised you the other half of her story. And so here it is. She was in love with a man in New York, but a part of her felt unfulfilled. He couldn't leave because of his job. She felt she needed to. And so they broke up. She left. She went and found herself. Then she came home and they got back together. They're still together now. They're in love more than ever. One of the things that Elise told me is people think a spouse will make you feel whole, but they won't. You must become whole yourself first. A partner is the cherry on top, not the sundae, she said. Then she added, we want others to be the answer to our dissatisfaction. She wrote an article, her blog, her newsletter is called Intently. She wrote an article on it that's called We Break Our Own Hearts. That was really beautiful. And here's a little bit that she wrote in there. She said, some walks you have to take alone. If you decide to go down that path, brace yourself. It's going to put you through an unimaginable amount of pain. But I promise, pinky swear, the clouds will part. And once they do, you'll access a massive reservoir of self-love and confidence. That version of you on the other side that will embrace you with open arms and be so glad that you made it. And as for your relationship, if it's meant to be, it will be, because if it's true love, you two will find your way back to one another. And then you'll return to a more rounded person. That's a gift to both them and you. So here's where I go with that. I think you should enjoy different hobbies. I think you should travel, explore, not to be afraid to evolve or for your spouse to evolve. Stagnation is unattractive. It forms moss. In order for you to grow together, each partner needs to grow apart. Allison does art, I write books. I don't knit or have any desire to knit. She doesn't write books, nor do we talk much about the books that I write. What indeed is love if not the enmeshing of separate excitements, wrote Maria Popova. My opinion is that she's the prettiest, coolest, most clever knitter ever. Her opinion is that I'm the smartest, coolest, and most handsome writer ever. We don't have to know all about knitting or writing to form these opinions. Some things we share, like fitness, and other stuff we don't. Not overlapping means we always have stuff to talk about, uncomplicated by personal investment, devoid of competition. As Lydia Netzger wrote, we can still support each other without being all in the other person's stuff, doing your own thing, having your own friends, being completely insanely passionate about something that the other person has no idea really about is awesome. When we lived in Uruguay, Allison traveled to Peru for this ayahuasca ceremony in the jungle for 3 weeks. I went to Rio de Janeiro to hang with some guys I knew that were living there. We were both coming to life in new ways, becoming aware of deep character traits we never reckoned with before. Her energetically, me experientially, trusting that the other person was discovering themselves in profound ways to bring back to our relationship as we continue to do this life thing together. In The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, there's this poem called On Marriage, and people read it at weddings all the time, so you might have heard it, but here's a short excerpt from it. He wrote, fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another of your bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone, even as the strings of a lute are alone as they quiver with the same music. A lute, Ren, from your childhood.
Give your lute players these days, John. I meant to say that the last episode. I'm glad you brought it up. What happened to lute? I mean, when I was in school, man, I can't even tell you about the loot parties that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. That's not important.
Yeah.
It's not important.
Well, that's what happened. It was like, yo, Reggie, you want to come to the loot party? And he's like, who all else up there?
Yeah, who all over? I'm glad they didn't have cell phones back in the loot days, John, because it was wild, bro.
Who all over there?
But you'll never see it.
Yeah.
Who all over there?
Back to this beautiful poem. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts and stand together, yet not too near together. For the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow. That's a poem. I guess I'm the kind of guy who includes poetry in my books now. We'll see whether that makes the final version.
Well, happy birthday, John. Happy. When did I miss the 39th? Did that happen already? Is that where you're off the grid?
October.
Oh.
No, it was
okay.
October.
Oh,
but
okay.
it's
well,
just
happy 40th.
Allison's birthday actually is in a couple of days. Allison's birthday is the day after Valentine's Day. So
that's awesome. Happy birthday, Dr. Allison.
There you go. She'll be 41.
Best Fitness Jones training tank top model I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
The stock skyrocketed when she made her appearance on. Yeah, I'm a big deal now. I'm sorry, go John. You were saying about the loot?
About the loot. Yes, about the loot. I guess what I'm getting at with this is that in order to live a life together, you've got to learn how to live your own, to lift your own weights. There's a saying that I like, which is that sameness attracts, but newness keeps us together. And it's true that most days are the same, but occasionally there's one of marked contrast. You can't lose that. call it the first rule of getting through life. You have to care about something other than yourself or the person that you're with.
Mhm.
We didn't do this in the last episode, did we ever? Does that sound familiar? Okay, good.
No.
Good. I told you I specifically marked the stamp on my document here of where we left off, and then I went through and I edited all of this because it was just on my
Yeah.
in my things to do, and I of course removed that marking over the course of my editing.
In there. Yep.
So that was
That
stupid.
makes total
I
sense
have
to me.
bamboozled my own work before like that too.
Yeah,
Bamboozled. There's a good word.
very good. Good word.
Yeah.
Good use of your
I tried
word.
to learn how to play the lute, and I was bamboozled.
There you
There
go.
should be a hip hop song called "Give Me the Loot," and I'm gonna make sure I send that to our messaging
Just
group.
give me the
So y'all can-
lute.
No, that's Shaggy. That's give me. I don't know what that is, John. I think that's Shaggy, maybe.
What's this? Okay, Len, I need to ask a black guy something.
All
Emma,
right.
please.
Do we have?
Question.
I'm
Something.
not answering without the music though.
Yeah.
Just so you're clear. Amber. Oh yeah, yeah.
The other one.
I like that. That's nice.
Okay, Super Bowl. Kendrick Lamar beef with Drake. Apparently, that's a thing, and that was a big thing. What? How? Why?
Yeah, because he was.
Why do we care about this? Why am I supposed to? Am I supposed to care about this as a white guy?
First of all, we don't.
Okay,
And
good.
this is slightly out of scope of a 50-year-old black guy with no teenage children.
I
I'm
understand.
childless, so my friends had to school me on what happened. But as I
Got it.
understand it, there was a threatening of lawsuit should Drake's name be mentioned. And Kendrick purposely paused in the show and walked slowly, looked into the camera,
Right.
and said Drake's name just out of hip hop beef spite.
I see.
And the universe exploded, John. Like the
Can
the
he write that off
internet
as a
devolved
business
into
expense?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's good for his publicity. So can he write?
so good. It's so
Just
good for his
curious.
publicity. Now, I'm sure any litigation would be handled by the business entities that handle Kendrick Lamar, just for the nonstop barrage of "Ooh, did you see that?" on the internet
Yeah.
that has followed that incident that I was completely unaware of while I was watching the Super Bowl. But I did have some Twizzlers, and they were
Good. Glad you had
delicious.
Twizzlers. Okay, why
Yeah.
was Serena Williams there?
She was there because Drake used to date Serena Williams,
Right?
right? Yeah, they used to date back in the day. Well, everybody in Hollywood's dated everybody, John. Dogs have dated cats, and bats
But
have
he
dated
stalked her,
insects.
didn't he? That
Yeah,
was part of the
yeah, yeah,
problem.
He what
yeah.
her?
Huh?
What'd he do, Emma?
Drake stalked Serena Williams, is my understanding. There was a
there was
comment
What?
thing about
it
that.
was it was a there was an amalgamation of complications with their partnership. So it was messy.
I
So
see.
she was there for two reasons. Number one, she got called out at Wimbledon for a dance that she did. It's called a Crip Walk after the Los Angeles Crips. It's a dance that you'll see often, like in the Snoop and Dre video from the '90s.
Oh,
And Wimbledon,
I'm. Yes, I know what a crip
familiar.
walk is.
So
Clearly.
she did that at the Super Bowl as an fu to the establishment,
I
but
see.
also to appear dancing in the song that Kendrick Lamar wrote as a diss to Drake
I
was
see.
like yeah. So there was a lot of
There was a lot of.
interpersonal.
So basically, the entire Super Bowl was just the entire Super Bowl halftime show was basically just like a giant fu to Drake.
It was an
Like,
extension of an
Drake
fu to
belonged
Drake
to that many people.
and quote
I mean, his
unquote middle
music sucks.
America.
Like
Yeah.
his music sucks, but like, is he
Well,
actually like wrong that many people?
it's Drake. No, it's just the beef with Kendrick Lamar got really, 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 really blown up. Slow
I
news
see.
cycles. There was not
Yeah.
much else going on at the
Right.
moment,
Okay.
and people really picked a side.
I see.
It's less filling or it tastes great, John, but not in between. Everybody knows that. So
Okay.
the bull took charge and slit malt liquor, and something happened in Super Bowl,
Got it.
and that's my synopsis.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, it was my pleasure. We need a younger black guy for this one though, to really dive into it. There's a lot of dissing though, homie.
It would be very funny if there was just like a 20-year-old black guy in your apartment for absolutely no
For no
reason.
reason.
And and I ask a question like this, and you're like, "Let me call in my younger black
Yeah.
guy," and he
Let
just
me
runs in.
let me get Ant. Yo, Ant, come here, Ant. Answer this question. My
It would
little
have to
brother's
be
name is
Ant.
Anthony, by the way, William Anthony
Yeah.
Jones, but he's not. He's 10 years behind me, so he's already old too. He's 40, but he would know the answer. Also, I don't think my father, Reverend Jones, would be super happy that there was a random 20-year-old male in my home.
Can we also talk about one of the things that I always enjoy about whenever I watch football, which is not very often, are just the names of the players. Like dude's
Oh, it's
name
the
is
best.
Sasquan Barkley. Like, come on, man.
Saquon, but that's the same thing.
Saquon. There you go.
But the play he
That's
did was
why
the other day, or however long ago it was so good. It
What
he
was so
was?
jumped
much.
backwards over that person,
Yes, it
where
was
he
so
leapfrogged
good.
someone going backwards in the air and then landed and continued to run. He's an X Man. That's why that Key and Peele skit is so funny.
Oh, so funny.
It's the funniest thing ever because
Yeah.
it's so accurate. And it started because of a real football player named DeBrickashaw Ferguson. This is we played in the early 2000s. Big guy, I think defensive lineman. His name is DeBrickashaw Ferguson. The D has an apostrophe after it before you
Right.
get to the Brickashaw. So
Of
it's
course.
D/Brickashaw Ferguson,
Mm.
and I love it. I love all things football. You should watch more often, John. We should go to a game in Canada if they ever have one. If they
Should
have
we?
a American football, well, I knew they have
The Bills
Canadian football.
the Bills play a couple games usually in Toronto each year.
Yeah, yeah, they're close enough. It's right across, and I've never seen Niagara Falls, so I don't know the proximity of those things. So
Niagara
we'll
Falls is
we'll
close.
plan for it. I don't
You
want to
come visit
hijack
Toronto.
the
You
show.
come visit Toronto. I'll take you to Niagara Falls.
Okay, thanks so much, John.
All right.
I'm sorry we disrupted your loot story and the subsequent poetry that went along with
Well,
it.
we're on to the next section, so that's good. So let's let's
All right.
let's 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 get back in.
Well, this
Then
was
we
an
can all
awful segue.
then we
No
can all
matter
go
what
in
you
and
say next.
to Brickashaw.
No matter what you say next, the Brickashaw is an awful segue to any next portion of anything.
That's right. That's right. Well, but I
Speaking of the
digress.
Brickashaw, yeah.
But I digress. Did you know, by the way, that if the kangaroos were to invade Uruguay, then every Uruguayan would have to fight 18 kangaroos. But I digress.
Oh my
We
God.
should work hard on big and difficult things. We should dissociate from the outcome of those things. So I like the game of Texas Hold'em poker, not so much the playing of the game, more so the lessons learned about decision making from the game. Poker is a game defined by imperfect information, same as life. We know some stuff's generally known by everybody. Luck plays a large role, and other stuff is known by others and not by us. Also, you're going to lose more than you win, and so you better make the wins count. However, what matters in the short term isn't that you win or lose, it's how you win or lose. When a good poker player loses a hand, they ask themselves whether what happened was a bad result or a bad decision. So, this is important. Let's unpack this. If we work on hard things and execute upon a series of good enough actions, great results will reliably happen. But they might not happen right away, and you won't know when the odds will even out or when you'll catch a lucky break that you've earned. This ambiguity is hard to reconcile. Our brains suck at optimizing for probabilities. In the short term, you can't control the outcome, only the process. So long as you execute on good enough habits for long enough, great things will reliably happen. Now, I know, you've heard all of this before. You've also been told to celebrate the process. You don't need somebody else to tell you to celebrate the process. You already simultaneously buy into the idea of celebrating the process and have no idea how to actually celebrate the process. Allow me to propose a solution. The people who love you want to celebrate with you, but they don't know how. Left to their own devices, they'll wait for a positive outcome, a job promotion, the sale of a business, an award, and they'll celebrate after the fact. Poker players celebrate when they make a great decision, even if the cards don't go their way this time. They're able to intuitively grasp probabilities, knowing that luck plays a large role in the short term, but if you continue to make good enough decisions, luck over time becomes irrelevant. Celebrating wins can reinforce the wrong things. You can make a bad decision and still win in the short term. A 95% chance of failure still comes with a 5% chance of success. Winning can be deceiving that way. So sure, celebrate wins, that's cool. But mostly, celebrate good decisions and positive actions. Do this before there's an outcome to measure, because there might not be any outcome this time, but there will be so long as you don't give up over time. Despite knowing all of this very useful philosophy, I have a hard time putting it into practice. It's unnatural to celebrate the process. A win is an event, easy to identify. It's not your loved one's responsibility to figure out when and how to celebrate. It's yours. Left to their own devices, they will celebrate the easy thing to celebrate, which are the wins. Meanwhile, all along the process, during those moments of doubt where you questioned yourself, your path, and your actions, all of those times in the dip where you nearly quit and needed support, they were curiously absent. It's not that they didn't want to be there for you. It's that they didn't know that they needed to. We keep our work to ourselves as we labor on, struggling in isolation, wishing, hoping, yet never reaching out for the support that we need to keep going. So here's my solution. Schedule in advance shared experiences with people that you love at waypoints that signify process wins along your journey of doing something that matters. An example from the previous book, from The Obvious Choice. The day after submitting the first draft to my editor, I took my family on a trip to the two-volcano island of Ometepe. The day after submitting the second draft for a full edit, I met my dad for a week in Oaxaca City. The day after submitting the final manuscript, Allison and I enjoyed a romantic getaway in Key Mixto. All of these events were scheduled far in advance. In some cases, I self-imposed a deadline, told my editor, and scheduled a trip for the day after. I wrote the section I'm reading to you almost exactly a month before the previous book, before The Obvious Choice got released. When I wrote this, there was no outcome. That goal had not even been met yet. The book wasn't available for sale. I hadn't even gotten paid my full advance on it yet, let alone earned any royalties. Will Choice sell well and earn critical acclaim? I don't know. If it does, when will that happen? No idea. Will I ever be able to recognize that book as a success or failure? It's unlikely. Which brings me to the central problem of doing things that matter, even if they only matter to you, which is awesome. There probably won't ever be a defined outcome to celebrate. Like, what's good? 10,000 copies sold? 100,000? A million? Just numbers, sure. They're representative of something, probably, that people like my work, that perhaps it's useful to them in some way, but honestly, what does that even mean? Like, what am I to do with that information? When I finish this book, The Obvious Challenge, I will be glad to have done something I believe was worth doing, but also will have a hard time saying goodbye to a project that means a lot to me. It'll leave a hole. Suppose I get what I want, the book's a success, critically acclaimed, a bestseller. I should be delighted, and I don't know, maybe I would be. But if I am, that feeling won't last. And if it was the only thing pulling me forward, I'd end up aimless and depressed, regardless. The pursuit over. A successful project is still a completed project. You need something to do after. I don't need the money from my last book or this book. I don't write books for the money. Not that I won't be happy if the books don't make a lot of money. Of course I will. And I'm sure that my publisher and agent would very much like these books to sell well. But selling well isn't enough to keep me plugging away at 5 a.m. while my beautiful wife lies in bed without me. The test for whether something matters is whether it makes you a better person for having done it. I'm going to say that again. The test for whether something matters is whether it makes you a better person for having done it. Part of that is whether or not it brings you closer to the people that you love as a result. A simple way to guarantee success is to design shared experiences with people you love to celebrate every major process win, regardless of the outcome. Build in rewards in the way of shared experiences with people that you love as a way to celebrate the process, to endure the challenge of keeping with it. People who love you want to support your career and your passions. These people will rarely shout the loudest to demand your attention. Time passes, and if you're not careful, you'll end up neglecting them. The very people who want the best for you. And then even a win will feel empty. So it's up to you to include people in your process. It's up to you to invite people you love into the world. Celebrate the outcome, sure, but also make damn sure to celebrate the process together. That way, regardless of the outcome, this time, it's a win because the result shows itself, or if it ever shows itself. My previous book, The Obvious Choice, it's already a win. When I wrote this, the book wasn't even released yet. It wasn't going to happen for a month, but because of how much I got to celebrate the process by making memories with my family along the way, I'd already won. And you know what I figured out? I figured out that that's what kept me going. I get asked from time to time, how do I do these big projects? The software, the certification, the books. These big things that obviously take a tremendous amount of work in isolation. By myself or with a small team. How have I been able to do that over the years? And this is how. This is how. Despite The Obvious Choice being a grueling 3-year process to get that book into the world, I had waypoints to look forward to along the way, pulling me forward, motivating me to keep going, to push just a little bit longer, to get through the stickiest of the sticky points, deep in the muck of a seemingly never-ending project. And now here I am doing it again, right? All of these books, all of these projects, this process, all a part of the same long and winding journey, one without an end but full of waypoints in the past that make up my memories, and waypoints in the future to look forward to. All along the way, celebrating with the people that I love the most in the world, doing challenging work that matters to me, which I think is pretty wonderful.
I think there's an interesting, what do you want to call it, like piece of advice that is contrary to this about like not sharing what you're working on.
Right. Tell me more about that.
Because so there's, and I'm going to jack it up, but basically the idea is that if you share what you're working on, you kind of lose the steam in it, like it loses its specialness or something. And like you end up not following through. Like the act of sharing it with others removes your motivation to do it or something along those lines.
Do
So
you think
this is
that that's
kind of
true?
contrary to that.
Have you found that to be true in your experience?
For some people, yes.
In your
I've
experience,
definitely
have you
been
found that to
guilty
be
of
true?
that to a certain extent. Because it almost becomes now too overwhelming. I've set this expectation, I've shared it with others, and almost create too much of a expectation for myself to follow through.
So it's a matter of almost hiding it to yourself to give you like an easy out.
Well, to give for some people some time to, I don't think everybody thinks things through all the way, right? And like, or they act on impulsivity. I'm going to do this thing, and then you don't do it.
And then you get
so like
into it and you're like, oh yeah, this thing, like everything, is actually really hard and it's going to take a long time.
Right.
Yes,
exactly.
what's the proxy? It's like, are you willing to accept that this is going to take twice as long as you think and provide you half of the rewards you anticipate? If so, have at it, boy. But
Otherwise, that's interesting. I've never heard that, Amber.
I just be my circles.
That's
well, but your circles are really important.
fair.
Your circles are really important circles for me to understand. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love having both of you on this podcast, because we're in different circles. We live in different places. We grew up in different ways. We live our lives at different paces today. I have blind spots. We all do. And you guys have continuously helped me identify my own blind spots. So I want to understand more of this, Amber. Can you tell
She
me
was
more
like,
about
I
this?
have no more
Oh,
for you
I
to
thought
understand.
you were thinking.
Well,
Um,
I am, but I don't even. It's. I'd love for you to talk to me a little bit more about it, and then perhaps I can ask more pointed questions as I begin to understand it, because the construct is so foreign to me.
yeah.
I've always been an oversharer of stuff.
And I am too, but that's also why I often get into a rhythm of start, stop, start, stop, because almost
Sure.
like when you've started and stopped things publicly so often,
Hmm.
like you end up scared to keep starting, because really what you're doing is you're figuring things out, right? Like there's nothing wrong with starting and stopping as long as you're not hurting anybody else in the process.
That should
But like,
almost be celebrated as much
right, exactly. Like you're
as
figuring
anything.
things out.
Hmm.
Something may sound great in theory, but in practice it sucks. Like that, we see that all the time. But if you do that so often to the point where you're too scared to start something that might be actually the right thing for you, you end up with not ever doing
Right.
it because you don't want to fail again.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess the protection against this is you don't need to tell these people that you've scheduled these events with them
mm,
until it gets closer to. Like I didn't. I mean, I didn't tell my dad that. Well, my dad and I wanted to take a trip together.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell him that this trip was a celebration trip for the day after my second draft manuscript submission until the week before we left.
mm.
He didn't know why the date was chosen. That was chosen. Um, So maybe that's a potential solution. Is you could still schedule time and experiences with loved ones. It doesn't have to be trips. I mean, for me it is, but it doesn't have to be trips. But you could still schedule time and experiences with loved ones that, in your mind, you know that you're celebrating something
Hmm.
um, that you can look forward to, and then you let them know closer to, or um, you don't have to cancel them if you don't do the thing. You
and
just
and
don't
I
tell
would
them
maybe
why you
challenge
originally booked it.
and I would maybe challenge a little bit. I don't know that what you shared, at least so far, explains how to do a thing. Like it gave an example of how you do it, but
Hmm.
how to celebrate the process. I don't know that it was clear enough, at least not to me, about like, okay,
Hmm.
so
Okay.
if the goal of the chapter is to help people actually how to do this thing, I don't know if that came through, at least for me.
So what could I do to make that more clear?
I'd have to think on, and I don't have to like actually read it to think through it, to come up with an answer for you on that.
Okay. I will send you this section.
Okay.
Yay, more things to do. It's so interesting because when books have too many frameworks and processes for doing stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I start to gloss over it.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished one, and it seemed like every single chapter, somebody in the author's life was like, "Give me an acronym for that. Give
Mm-hmm.
me a
Yeah.
Give me a
Well,
3-step. Give me checklists. I need checklists. I need
but something
I
like
need a
this is
choose your own
hard
adventure thing, right?
because this is something that is nebulous to an extent, right? Like it's what celebration is to one person is to another is going to vary, at what time. What
Sure.
if the thing that they're working on has no obvious points, right? So like, for you had different kind of obvious mile markers along the process to choose from. What if they don't have those, or if they can't identify whether it's worth celebrating, or so
Right.
figuring that out, I think, is a little bit tough, and that's why talking about it in the past probably has been like, well, it just kind of depends, is kind of the answer, and there's no one way for everyone to figure it out.
I, I think foundationally it's against the backdrop of the fact that most people are unwilling to discover themselves. Like you can't set a waypoint like that when you don't really understand yourself. So people want instruction, not an invitation to introspection, right? Nobody wants to
Say that
sit and
again. Say that
converse with
again.
them. People want instruction, not an invitation to introspection, which is
Interesting.
what's
Okay.
actually going to solve the problem. Like turning in solves situations like that. But what happens most often, from my perspective, is that people are waiting for some arbitrary instruction on a system to follow instead of connecting with themselves to discover what means something to them. Tell me what should be important to me. It's sort of a standard question amongst humanity when they are reading, when they are
Right.
pursuing some type of improvement in their life. They want someone to tell them blatantly what they should view as being important,
Mm.
because it's possibly too frightening to connect with self. It's possibly too difficult
Right.
to authentically do what you think is important. So you want more important people to tell you what should be more important to you. And I think that's why there's so much of a tendency for frameworks to exist.
Yeah.
People don't take the Bible, for instance. Everybody needs an interpreter. If you believe in the text, you and this is not the only reason that you attend a regular spiritual practice, but one of the main reasons is people want to be taught how to interpret
Hmm.
their connection with whatever power they believe in.
Right.
I don't think it was, if it was written by God, and I'm not trying to get in that discussion with the Bible thumpers around here in the South, but if you truly believe that this is something that was handed down by your creator,
Right.
why are you so frightened to interpret it between you and the text and the creator, right? Why must you have to go somewhere to have someone else who's an expert tell you what God meant for you to understand in this text is blankety blank? I think that's sort of the underlying problem with anything that we ingest from a creative person that we think is going to help us improve. It's more of a here's what I it's more of a tell me what I need to do versus here's what I took from that. I think
Yeah.
people are frightened to rely on their own perception of information. So you got to have framework. I think that's why things that have frameworks have a tendency to sell in the manner that they do, because ultimately
They
we
do in
just
the
want to be
short term.
told what to do.
They do in the short term, but there's actually, if you think about it, very few frameworks that actually sell perennially and
Absolutely.
that have been proven out to stand the test of time.
The
That's the struggle. That's the constant headbutting
Yes.
that I'm going up against in my own mind. Is, I could develop frameworks. I've done that for OTA. I've done that for a lot of stuff over the past, but I truly don't believe that is the best way to serve you. And
Absolutely not.
but it is the best way to sell more books today. And herein lies the struggle, is the conflict between how can
Yeah.
I perhaps appease various shareholders of mine, publishers,
Right.
other people who operate my businesses for me, that have, part of the upside, etc., versus setting this work up to really stand the test of time and work bigger and bigger and bigger with every year that follows. It's the difference between um, a reaction video that I'm going to post on my social media account when somebody else does something dumb shit talking about how stupid they are, because I know that that's going to get the most amount of likes,
Right.
versus some sort of more nuanced, deep, in-depth teaching that is going to lead people to, uh, you know, that I can really help them perhaps learn something about themselves that they intuitively know but haven't yet grasped. It's the
How about
difference
that?
between those two. There's a conflict there, right? You're
Yes.
constantly going to be pulled towards the one that's going to give you more
Yes.
immediate gain, versus the one that is actually probably more in tune
Yes.
with who you are, but setting yourself up for the future. Um, it's this constant struggle.
The burden is always on the person who has the understanding. It always will be. And in all of our line of work, we're always the person who has the understanding. And the burden is, do I put you in a position to develop your own level of understanding, or do I solve it for you so you won't be frustrated as you migrate towards? And it's the reason why the women I work with ask me for a meal plan, not for nutrition coaching,
Yeah,
right? Because they want the thing now. They want the solution now. And I'm like, this won't benefit you. In 30
just give me the
days, you'll need
thing.
somebody else to tell you what to eat all 7 days again.
Yeah,
But still, you know, The desire is always going to be greater for the framework than for the understanding, and that's why we hold fast to presenting the understanding, because we know ultimately we know the tail of it ends up
Yeah.
better. Shawshank Redemption, man.
Great
People
movie.
didn't get it right away. They didn't get it
Good
for
example.
years, but now if you ask somebody, hey, what's one of the best movies? Oh, Shawshank Redemption, man, it's a classic. It's so good.
You ever see how much those actors are still getting in ongoing
Like,
royalties? It's hilarious. They made like $0 for the movie for the first like 15 years, and now
right.
they're all these royalty checks that they're getting are just insane.
Because as humans, man, stuff has to grow on us. Like we don't.
Yeah.
I don't think you need a framework though, right? I think even just admitting like that there is no clear answer and that's why it hasn't been answered before, right? But here's an example of what my version of this was. And you have to pick things that you have to, even if you make them up, different milestones along the way, and find a way that gives you something to look forward to, right? So you can give a broad idea, but to say like sometimes, like for example, like one of the things I struggle with Nate is getting him to the doctor to get his blood drawn, and I cannot for the life of me find a doctor that will help me figure out how to make that less traumatizing for him. And if someone were to say, look, there is no good way, it sucks, like it's going to be traumatizing, I would feel better if they were honest about that versus, well, if you do a social story, da 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 da, like, lady fucking no, I'm terrified of me.
Right.
I cried when I got a flu shot. Okay, like no, he comes by this naturally, and he doesn't have the receptive language for a social story. So if they would be honest, right? So even I think in a situation like this, is you don't need a framework, but to direct attention that like yes, this theory is good, but how you apply it is so individual. Here are the broad strokes of figuring it out, and here's what it looked like for me. But you have to play around and figure it out for yourself. But it's worth doing.
That's a good answer, Amber.
Okay, I think about that. Think about how I might want to word that or voice that.
We'll see if anybody else feels the same. I might just be dense, which is always possible. So,
No, I don't think you are. I think you feel feelings in a way that I don't. There's a lot of
them to you.
obviously it's just especially when I see like what books sell like crazy, like the one that's selling right now, like mad, like might contend with Mark Manson's Subtle Art for the most viral, fastest selling book ever.
The Let Them Theory.
Is Let Them Theory, right? And I downloaded a sample of it just to check it out what it was, and I was like, "What the fuck is this shit?"
I know.
I was like, "This is the most." I was like, "This is the most icky, superficial, nice sounding, useless fucking advice I've ever seen." But that's me not getting it. Obviously, that's me not getting it, because very clearly there is something there that is exceptionally powerful and resounding to a phenomenally large amount of people. I mean, last week alone in hardcover, that book sold over 120,000 copies. So Kindle audio, probably another 50 to 70,000 copies, right? So that book would have sold close to 200,000 copies last week. I don't think that the book is stupid. I think I don't get it. I think I'm missing something.
You don't suffer from the problem that the book is solving, which I think is...
But it's clearly a big problem.
Right.
Yeah,
right?
It is. Oh, 100%. Like the thought, like I understand, like let them, like that's a good phrase, right? As like a mantra to yourself. Let them think that. Let them do that. That's not in my control. Outside of that, to make a whole book out of it, well done. Because I don't think I could come up with enough to say around that.
Let them. Okay. We got two words. Okay. Shit, we need 54,998 more. Who's
Right.
got something?
I mean, unless it's all examples. I mean, to
You,
be fair, I haven't
dummy in the
read
back.
it,
Throw a word
but
out.
like,
Put that in the book.
oh my god.
I I just think
We got
overwhelmingly, I
two
think that this
words.
is a problem that most men don't suffer from societally. Like I
Yeah.
think that societally w- we indoctrinate women to to assign guilt for normal tasks that you know any humans allowed to do anything that we've indoctrinated women to feel guilty about. And I think the book, not only the platform, right? Because it's not like this book came out of the blue and it's just a new author that nobody's ever heard
Oh,
of,
sure,
and
sure.
it's just that good. I mean, there's an insane supportive platform already undergirding the sale of the book. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
and also I think in terms of how gender would be the word to go here. In terms of how each gender moves through life,
Yeah.
there's a lot more connection for the female gender to this internalized difficulty of feeling some sort of emotional attachment to how their decisions may impact people around them. I think just kind of generally men aren't that concerned with the let them of it all.
Sure,
We
Do
sure.
you
kind of
guys not
been
deal
letting
with
them,
But
criticism? Because
yeah,
for
that's kind of the idea, is dealing with criticism, is let them say that, let
yeah.
them think that,
Not,
whatever. Do you
I
not
don't think in the
experience
same way.
that? Hmm.
Being a dude that works with women exclusively, I don't think that we receive it in the same way or internalize it in the same way.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it just because, as I can't remember the lady's name, but she said we we raise our girls to be perfect. We raise our boys to be brave, right?
Hmm.
And
right.
that's a great statement. Um, I won't expand any further.
I mean, look, like clearly I have blind spots. Clearly we all do. Whether it's a whether it's a generational thing, whether it's a gender thing, it's probably some combination of all of them. We've already established I'm old. I'm actually afraid to get up right now because I
That hurt.
the pushing and straightening my leg to stand is I know is going to require effort. You know that I'm not quite sure whether I'm willing to
Uh,
push out.
you'll-
But I guess where I'm at with all of this, God, who thought we were going to talk about this today? I guess where I'm at with all of this is the decision is whether and how you want to show up in the world, right? And there are always going to be ways to show up in the world um, in a way that's right for one person and not right for another, in a way that perhaps fulfills short-term needs more than others. And I mean, this is really at the crux of my next book. I mean, literally, like the statement in the introduction is the obvious challenge we all face is balancing short term desires with long term planning. It's getting the order right, recognizing the truth of what matters most in this life before it's too late, setting us up for the future without forgetting to stop and enjoy the magic of the present. Um, it's the challenge, right? It's not easy at all. And there's always going to be people out there who are going to be doing uh, much better or have figured things out in the short term. No, maybe the answer is just blind faith and make sure you have people to celebrate in the lifeboats with. You got that episode with Elise Ember?
I do. Hang on, let me pull it back up. It is episode 265,
Cool.
creating
So
opportunities for luck to strike.
wonderful. So episode 265. It's with Elise LeMay. You heard a bit of her story before. She's wonderful. She's a like freelance copywriter. Lives in New York City. But she kind of went out of her way to take herself on a journey. She had a life that was kind of set, and it did not feel right to her. And she took herself by herself, very far away abroad, to Indonesia, to Canggu, and then some other places. And it was hard. And she discovered herself and discovered, she left her world that she existed within, that she was comfortable within, um, in in a search for more challenge, so that she could return to the world that she existed in as a changed person, and then had to figure out how to exist within her old world as a new person. And I think that's pretty damn cool. So, episode 265, if you want to have a listen.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Thanks. Time for tacos.
Okay, bye.